On our recent family holiday, this Land Cruiser was rolled over. Now, it provided a very stressful environment and it meant we had to recover the vehicle from down an embankment. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the whole process of recovering the vehicle, my thoughts, what was going on in my head, and I'm going to use this negative experience to help us all learn what we can when we get into these really dangerous, nasty environments when we're out there wheeling. Now, I could obviously critique myself and come to you like, you know, it was only a few little things I got wrong. But I really do want to learn from this situation and help all of us wheel well. So I've asked a friend of mine, Robert Pepper, he's also a peer and a mentor, to be involved and basically watch this footage through with me and critique it and bring a fresh set of eyes to the whole situation so we can all learn from this really negative situation. What I love doing here at Mad Matt 4-Wheel Drive is building the four-wheel drive community, and I love helping people to learn how to get out there and wheel well. Now, if that's what you're into, hit that subscribe button, and then if you hit the bell, you'll get notifications when we put up videos. Let me introduce you to Robert. So Robert is not only a peer, he's a YouTuber, and he's the author of 4 books in the four-wheel drive space. So he really is an authority on this subject, which is why I really wanted to get him involved in critiquing and reviewing and going through this content with us. So welcome, Robert. I really do appreciate you making yourself available for this video.
Thanks, Matt, and look, I'm really honoured that you asked me, and thanks on behalf of the four-wheel driving community worldwide. It's not often you get to see a warts and all careful walkthrough of a recovery like this, so I think it's something we can all learn from, and it will be a valuable community resource.
Just so you all know, Robert has reviewed this footage prior to this recording, and that was so that he was familiar with it and knew what he wanted to bring to the table. I'm a bit of a storyteller, so I'd love it if you grab a beer or a coffee or whatever you want to drink, because I want to tell you a story. So how did it happen? Well, we were camped at Black Snake Campground on the Wonnangatta Road, which is down in the Victorian high country of Australia. That's as big a mountainous area as we have here in Australia. So we're camped down there. We left camp. There was 4 vehicles in the convoy. There was myself leading it in my 105 series Land Cruiser. There was my eldest son in his 80 series, which you'll see in this video. There was my mate Rod in his 79 series Land Cruiser. My son was bringing up the rear of the convoy. We call it Tail End Charlie. And we're all travelling at around about 30 to 40 kilometres an hour. For this road, that was a very safe speed, I would have thought. We came along and all of a sudden, over the CB radio, we hear, "Mayday, mayday, I've gone off the road." What do you do with that? It's like, so I just picked up the radio and said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I've gone off the road, I'm okay." Well, that was good. We knew that he wasn't, you know, he was okay, but I need you to come back and help me, the car's upside down. Oh, what? So we turned around and we start travelling back. Now, we didn't have very far to go, maybe a maximum a kilometre for me as being at the trip leader.
So first thing I would say is that's a really smart thing of your son to do, because whenever you're in a situation where the trip leader or other people realise there's a problem, the first thing everybody wants to know is, are you okay? Right? And that's what you've got to communicate first and foremost. For him to say that was great presence of mind in order to put everyone's mind at rest, because obviously bent 80 series can be fixed, bent people not so much. And by the way, I think I've already figured out what your problem was on this trip: too many Toyotas, lack of diversity in four-wheel driving. Matt, you know, you've got to be a bit more inclusive to all makes and models.
The Land Rover broke down earlier. Ran out of oil.
All right, well, we'll just leave that unbaited hook in the water and just keep moving on.
We get to the accident site and it's on the junction of the Wonnangatta Road and Scrubby Creek Track. It's a sharp, tight sort of left-hand turn for us. Now, my son has only just got his licence and he's had it about 6 weeks, if that, at the time. So he's very inexperienced in his driving skill set. Even though you obviously try to teach them all you can in things, he's still inexperienced. So he's come around this corner, he's come into the corner too fast, and he's hit on the brakes. The trouble with that is, I suspect that's kicked the back of the vehicle outwards. So he's corrected that, and then like I've taught him, although he applied it incorrectly, like I've taught him, he got onto the power. But now his wheels are pointing the wrong way, he's got on the power, being an all-wheel drive vehicle, in four-wheel drive, he's driven himself off an embankment.
Yeah, so on that dirt road driving stuff there, I think it's interesting to reflect the differences between an older vehicle like the 80 and a modern vehicle, let's say a 200 series. So modern vehicles have all got stability control, and you can leave that enabled for dirt road driving, because basically if it kicks in too much, you're driving like a hoon or you're not being smooth enough. And that may well have kept the vehicle on the road. Also, with no ABS on the 80, as soon as you lock the brakes, you then have no more steering control, whereas with ABS, you don't necessarily stop any quicker, but you can certainly retain some form of steering control. And there's pros and cons actually to the crash itself. With a modern vehicle, I think that the US standards require 5 times the weight of the vehicle on the roof before it deforms or something like that, quite a lot. So if it rolls, it's actually fairly safe. But if it had been a modern vehicle with airbags, chances are the airbags would have gone off and that would have made a massive mess inside. Whereas with the older vehicle, the airbags haven't gone off, and then you don't have that sort of grief and mess to clear up there. So, you know, kind of pros and cons to look at there from old and new vehicles.
Now, we've all made mistakes in our lives, and many of us have got away with them. My son didn't get away with it. Now, I'm not going to tolerate anybody bagging out P-platers, inexperienced drivers, or anybody for that matter on my channel. You do that, you'll be blocked, okay? It's quite simple, quite straightforward. Let's have a conversation here where we're all learning from this negative experience. Let me set the scene of how I went through this experience and my emotions and my headspace at the time. So I'm in holiday mode. The last thing I want to be doing is something like this. I've got my son involved in a very serious accident. That's obviously stressful to me. I'm embarrassed by the situation. I don't really know why I should be embarrassed, but that was an emotion I was feeling at the time. I was really disappointed as well, for myself and for my son, because we'd both put significant hours, energy and effort into this vehicle. We'd restored this vehicle from an absolute basket case into a fully kitted out, twin locked, reduction gears. You know, it had, if you wanted it, this vehicle had it. So we'd built it up into something really beautiful and really cool. My son was extremely proud of it. Just so you know, he bought the vehicle, like he paid money for it, so, and for the build. So he didn't get a freebie from us, because I don't believe in that. So I felt really, really disappointed that all of our hard work within a month was down the drain, so to speak. I felt really angry as well, and that was an emotion I was trying to manage, because I'm like, why did you know, and I wanted to get angry at my son as well. And I shouldn't be directing the anger towards him, but that was how I felt. I felt like, you know, you stupid idiot, why did you do that? Why? I never released any of that to him, because, but it was there in me, but I knew that that wouldn't help him. One of the first things he said, which I admired, when he got up, he said, or I think actually the moment we were pulling him out of the car, he said, "Dad, this was all my fault. It's all on me." And I really respected him for that. And the last thing he needed was his dad, who he holds in great high respect and high regard. The last thing he needed was me belting on him. So that anger element was within me as well.
So let's talk about respect before we do that. And I think it's awesome what your son did there to say it's all on him, which is not normally what he'd expect a young male to say. But also I think you're doing an amazing job here by making this video, warts and all, of explaining what's gone on and actually talking to people. There's so many lessons you can take away from this. And I'm not talking just about the winch rigging here, which we'll get to, but the emotions that you go through and how to deal with that. So, you know, on behalf of the four-wheel driving community, this is a really great video, Matt.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it.
So let's talk about arriving at the accident scene and what that was all like. So being on holidays, I'm in a pair of shorts, a t-shirt and a pair of thongs. For you Americans, that's flip-flops. It's not that, you know, it's not those. Now, a pair of thongs is not what you're going to wear going down that sort of embankment. So I took the time to put my boots on because, remember, I knew that my son was safe. He wasn't injured in any major way. He'd told me that, and I was talking to him as well. So I grabbed my boots, which I always keep ready at hand for exactly this reason. Now I start heading down the embankment. It is really slippery and steep, and you'll actually see in some of the footage, right about here on my leg, I've got blood coming out because as I was going down, I slipped over and grazed my leg quite bad, and it did get gravel rash and it hurt, but hey, I was way more worried about my young fella. I was also aware that the vehicle might be quite unstable and might well be ready to roll again. I don't know at this point. So as I'm approaching the vehicle, I'm looking at how it's locked into the landscape. And notice how the back of it's hooked into the tree. That gave me a fair degree of confidence that it was safe to go to the underside of the vehicle, which was obviously the dangerous side of the accident scene. But I tell you, I was more interested in getting my young fella out of the vehicle. To do that, my oldest son came and gave me a hand, and the seat belt was holding my young fella in his seat quite firmly, and so much so we couldn't actually get the button and the seat belt undone. So we had to sort of lift him up into the seat, reduce the pressure on the seat belt, and then we were able to get him out. As you can see, he was okay, and barring a few bumps and bruises and a very damaged pride, he was okay. Now his mother is a nurse, so we took him up the top of the hill and we made sure that he was okay. Let's talk about the equipment that I had on hand to perform the recovery. So, because this is a touring or overlanding style of trip, not a weekend I'm going to go and find the hardest type of four-wheel driving I can type of trip, I didn't take an extensive amount of recovery gear with me, but I did take a basic kit because you never know what you're going to need. So this is what I kind of call my grab kit. Now this is just got some basic gear that I take with me. This is a fast feed for repairing ropes. This is my hitch receiver for hooking to the rear of a vehicle, the Factor 55 rope retention pulley, 2 extreme duty Factor 55 soft shackles, and a tree trunk protector or 3-meter extension. That's a very versatile thing. But what I find is with this basic kit, I can perform a significant amount of basic recoveries, and it's served me well for quite some time. Now, just as an aside, if you'd like to support what I do here at Mad Matt 4-Wheel Drive, there's a link down below to A24/7, and you can purchase any of the Factor 55 gear there, and I'll get a little bit of a kickback which helps support the channel. But if you use the code MADMAT, you also get $20 off any order. Unfortunately, that's only available to Australians. If you're in America, just head on over to Factor 55, their website, and I'm sure you can purchase it from there. Aside from that, let's keep going here. Now, I also had on the 105 series Land Cruiser, the blue one, I had an 11,000 pound Runva winch. The other two vehicles, my mate Rodney, who's here in the orange shirt, he's got a 79 series Land Cruiser twin locked, and then my eldest son's got the twin locked grey or silver 80 series. Neither of those vehicles have winches on them though. So unfortunately, I only had the one winch, which was a real disappointment. I would have loved to have been able to use the winch that's on the front of this vehicle, but given that the engine couldn't run and all of that, I was not going to have enough battery power to make this winch any use to me at all. For any recovery, you've got to make a plan. Now, my mate Rod in the orange shirt there with the big beard, he's been wheeling for all the time I've been wheeling. He and I are best of mates, and you know, we would do literally anything for each other. So to have him there at this accident scene was amazing because he knows how I think, I know how he thinks, and I really did value his input into the situation. You'll notice as the video goes on, he disappears. It's not because of anything negative, it's because he recognized that he'd helped me have a plan. He'd recognized that I was best off just being left to my own devices. So he's gone off to manage traffic and go into Dargo and get us some hamburgers for lunch. So as we're starting to work out how we're going to recover the vehicle and get it back up onto the road, two vehicles drive past. and they recognise who I am. They pull up and they come back and they offer to help. Now, I'm really cautious at this point. I don't know them, I don't know their skill set, I don't know what they have to offer, and so I'm naturally very cautious around just getting them involved in what I know is a very complex and potentially dangerous recovery situation. And so they came down and they just started to help us out. But the way they did it is what I want to pick up on and applaud. They came with a servant attitude. They recognised that I was stressed and that I had an awful lot going through my head. So all they did was offered, like, if I made a suggestion, they offered to do it. If I was trying to solve a problem with a humble servant heart, they offered an idea or a solution. And so they were really helpful, and that approach helped serve me, but it also helped me start to get confidence in their ability. And it was purely because they didn't approach me with the, oh, we know how to sort this out, big-headed approach. And that's what I wanted to pick up on. I thought that was commendable. Big hats off to you guys. You know I've shaken your hands and I've said a big thank you to you personally, but I say it here now publicly. Thank you so much for the way you approached this situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because again, we can talk about the rigging and the recovery and everything else, but it's really important to focus on the psychology of recovery, because fundamentally that's often what makes or breaks the difference between a successful recovery or not. And people being helpful or not helpful and how they approach to it, I think, that's exactly right. I think it might have also helped because they automatically knew you knew how to do this stuff. They might have had a different attitude if it was just Joe random, in which case you've probably been in the same situation I have. You're thinking, okay, do these people have a clue? If they do, I will servant help them. If they don't, well, maybe I better be a bit more assertive. I don't know if you've been, surely you've been in that situation at some point.
Yes, I have, and usually you get the F-bomb thrown at you and you go, well, I can only do so much. I'm not going to put myself in danger if I'm not welcome, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's now mid-morning, the sun is belting down and it is really hot. My brain was going 110%. I was on full, and it was really stressful, and I was well aware of that. But I'm trying to make really good decisions the whole time. I was also feeling a real pressure that I was blocking a road. It meant that there was just a real stress that I was trying to manage the whole time. So I had another unexpected stress or challenge land in my lap. As we pulled out the winch rope, we hook it up to start pulling the vehicle back onto its wheels. I start winching in and nothing's happening.
Stop!
I'm going, what's going on here? And I realise the winch rope is spinning on the winch drum. And I'm like, oh man. Like I did my pre-trips, I made sure my winch was working before I went on the trip and all that. Right in the midst of the recovery, I'm now having to try and secure the winch rope onto the winch drum. It took 2 goes before we got it right, and then we got back into the recovery. You must be just about onto your 2nd or 3rd beer or coffee by now, eh? Anyway, let's start watching the actual recovery and see what we can learn from this. It didn't all go quite to plan. This shows you the terrain that we're dealing with for the recovery and the position of the vehicles. Now, for the first part of the recovery, we actually had the 105 series up where that mark is on the video. You'll see here the vehicle is pulled up a little bit. That's Aaron just making sure he's got tension on his strap. And now I start to winch in to pull the vehicle over onto its wheels.
You've got one line to pull the vehicle back on its wheels, another line to tether it, which is really good. We should talk to people about where you actually attach the line to pull a car back onto its wheels and where you don't attach it probably as well.
So in this situation, I used a hitch receiver in the rear of the vehicle, thinking that that was going to become my primary recovery point later in the recovery, and that's what Aaron was tethered to, and my intention was never to disconnect from that point.
which we didn't. The winch rope coming onto the vehicle to pull it back onto its wheels was attached to the chassis rail, rather than reaching up over and maybe attaching to the B pillar or something like that where I could damage the bodywork further. And I didn't want to attach to the slider just in case that, failed. I mean, I believe they're strong enough, but I know the chassis rail is strong enough. Now the vehicle's down on its wheels, but I'm not confident it's actually going to stay there by itself. So you can see I winch in to see if it'll settle down in some way. Then I let the winch off and the vehicle's not settling. So what we do is I just get Aaron to pull the vehicle backwards a little bit to get it off the rock that the front right wheel is sitting on. So this is the rock that I believe rolled the vehicle onto its side. If the vehicle didn't hit this rock, I don't think the vehicle would have been damaged that much at all. Now that this was back on its wheels, I repositioned the 105 series so it's better lined up to pull the vehicle back up the hill with the winch.
Okay, I love diagrams, so of course I've had to make one of your particular incident here. Now, I put a lot of effort into this, as you can see. It's superb diagramming there. I'd just like to take a moment and admire the beauty of it. So this brown thing here is the road. There's your crashed AT there. And what I can see that you've done is that you've put the 105 there. Now, I notice you're hanging the back wheels over the ditch, and I know why you've done that, because that will just increase the rolling resistance and stop the vehicle being pulled down the hill, because otherwise on that sort of low grip dirt road, it would certainly be pulled down the hill, which is no good. Then you've got a double line pull to the AT, and alternatively with winch extension straps there, which is great. And you've, so that's your double line pull. You've got a ute over there with a safety line with winch extension straps. And you've got the other AT over there, again, with winch extension straps. So that's basically what you're looking at there, I think.
Now we start pulling the 80 series up the embankment, and that goes well for a little bit, but then the 80 series starts locking into some rocks and debris on the embankment, and so Aaron gives me a pull and assists the winch, and that frees it once, but then it locks in again, and we just couldn't get it to move. So we're just trying to work all of this out at the moment.
So here's an alternate way to rig it, and again, it's not necessarily better, but it's always worth thinking through the options. So there's your crash 80, there's your 105. Now, you notice that the 105 is a lot closer to the edge there, and that's intentional. We're doing a double line pull, but we're going to anchor it to the ute this time rather than back to the 105. Now, that will still give you your mechanical advantage, and I've got videos where I explain exactly how that works. But it means that the anchor load on the 105 is halved, and that means the 105 can get closer to the crashed 80, and then it isn't angling its winch up into the sky, it's angling it down a bit, and then that reduces the load there as well. And you can set over your 80 with the optional line there as your safety. So, you know, there's different ways to rig these things, almost an infinite number of ways sometimes. That's just another option to consider.
When I look at that option, I actually wish I'd thought of that in the moment, because that would have given me a lot more resistance on the road surface, given me a firmer anchor point, because I've now got 8 tyres on the road instead of just my 4, and it would have resolved that issue of the breakover angle the rope was doing on the edge of the embankment. So I wish I'd come up with this idea. That's really helpful.
And you can see there that I've put the ute's front wheels over in the ditch, so that's got a lot of resistance there. Just different ways to look at it, but that's actually really useful redirect mechanical advantage rig there.
We started doing the winch procedure, and this didn't really want to roll. So I actually went down the hill, and very cautiously, I might add, I got in the vehicle and I pulled it out of park, and I pulled the handbrake off so that the vehicle could roll. And then I had the thought, what if I can drive assist with this? So I tried to start the motor. Well, turns out the motor was hydraulic. Engine oil had run past the piston rings into the cylinders, and therefore the motor wouldn't turn over, therefore I couldn't start the engine. Had I been able to start it, I then could have used the diff locks to drive assist the winch, which would have made the recovery load a lot lighter. But I would have taken the time to work out how to make the total situation as safe as I possibly could. Now, as we were winching the vehicle up, this vehicle started to lock into some rocks and cause us grief. So I repositioned the 105 closer to the 80 series, and we changed the angle we winched on. Now, my oldest son's 80 series, which you see it pulling and assisting the winch, that really helped reduce the load on the winch. Now you'll notice that we've got this embankment of the road behind us the whole time, and that made this recovery really, really difficult because it just made the whole thing so confined. And that's why the 80 series is pulling at such an angle, which really wasn't ideal, but it was the best that we could do in that situation. Now at this point I was really chuffed because I'd got the vehicle this far. The front was still over the embankment, and so I just decided to hook Aaron on and scull drag the front of the 80 series up onto the road.
Okay, so difficulty pulling the front end round there. Now, when you and I discussed this first time we had a look through, you said by this time you've been going for 2 hours, you had been running at full speed. I totally get that, you're kind of getting that fatigue there. And I think if you were kind of fresh, you'd have looked at that and gone, oh yeah, I could just do a little bit of shovel work there and just made that a bit easier. As you can see that the front wheels digging in there. Or another tip I found in those situations, you can't do it because your engine's not running, is actually to have the wheel spinning, because if the wheel is spinning, the car is actually easy to drag around, as opposed to if the car is just being scull dragged like it is at the moment.
I think from memory as well, the steering lock was on. What I've found in the past is if you leave the steering lock off, the wheels will find their path of least resistance as well, and so the vehicle wheels would have steered the direction that we wanted them to go as well, which would have helped. So yeah, I agree. By this stage I was genuinely fatigued, and I think I was starting to feel like I look back now and think I was starting to make some bad decisions. So it's probably just as well this is the end of the recovery.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's hard to keep going at full throttle and, you know, all the stress of all of that. You know, again, this comes back into the kind of the psychology of recovery. We should probably discuss that more, and how to keep the humans operating at peak performance, never mind the winches and everything else.
Well, that's the end of the recovery. So we've got a few more things I want to share with you and help you understand this whole picture a bit more. But Robert's going to leave us now. Now, Robert, I would like to say thank you so much for your time once again. And guys, if you would do me a great personal favour, and that is to head over to Robert's YouTube channel and give him a subscribe, hit the bell so you get the notifications from his channel. His channel is very different to mine, but his channel is a real deep dive into a lot of very technical content around four-wheel driving, recovery, operating your vehicles. It's just a wealth of knowledge that he brings to the table on YouTube.
Thanks, Matt. Much appreciated. Again, honoured to be asked, and I think this is an amazing resource to sort of go through into the detail, the thinking, the thoughts, the emotions of what was an incredibly stressful recovery. And again, I think thank you on behalf of the four-wheel driving community worldwide for just opening this all up. It's really great.
My pleasure, Robert. So let's find out what else happened after that.
So what did we do after we got the vehicle up the embankment? Well, we had to get it going and hopefully continue on our trip. Obviously, all of these decisions were up in the air at this point in time. So the first thing I needed to address was the hydraulic motor. How did I do that? Well, I pulled out the 6 spark plugs and I cranked it over. And what did that do? Well, it pumped oil everywhere. It made a right mess of the whole engine bay, but did I care? Not one little bit. I just wanted the thing to go. I was so over it all by this time. Now, fortunately, my mate Rod had turned up with a hamburger, so we had a hamburger and had a drink and had a bit of a relax, and that was quite needed by this point in time. Now, I then came across another problem, and I am honestly, to this day, completely baffled by this one. I put the vehicle in drive to drive it. No drive, absolutely zero drive. I'm thinking we've damaged something in the accident. I checked the automatic transmission fluid. There's no auto fluid in the gearbox. It was driving when it went off the embankment. There's no auto fluid anywhere in the accident site, anywhere in the vehicle, nothing. But there's no fluid in the auto. I don't know. So we just flat tow the vehicle into Dargo, where there's a small general store and some supplies and a campground. We decided let's just camp here for the day or for the night and make a plan, reassess, have a rest, all of that. So there's some footage after this, which is me kicking back a little bit, very relaxed, whilst we try to get the vehicle up and running and fixed and straightened out a little bit and work out a plan. So enjoy that footage. What happened with the automatic? Well, we put about 4 litres into it and we got drive. That was great. It still wasn't registering on the dipstick, but the general store had no more oil available, but we had enough to keep going. So that was a start. These gearboxes, when they're completely empty, I think they take around about 15 litres of oil. At the end of the day, I managed to get oil here, there and everywhere. We put 15 litres of oil into this transmission before it stabilised. Can you tell me how this thing even drove to drive off the embankment? I'm completely bamboozled. There is no oil leaking out of this transmission. After we got it stabilised, we drove a further 1,500 kilometres over another 2 weeks with this vehicle in this condition. And I got nothing to say about it. We enjoyed the rest of our holiday to a point. We did, believe it or not, have some other mechanical dramas. We put a fan through the radiator of this motor. We wore out all of the brake pads and a few other dramas. If you'd like to watch a video on that, it's linked up above. We put it up a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, guys, enjoy this footage after I close off because, you know, it's just a bit of a laugh and it's not quite so, you know, whatever. But anyway, guys, I hope you've learnt a lot from this video. I've learnt a lot. I've been reflecting on the whole process a considerable amount since it happened. And I'd love you to put in the comments down below what you think we could have done better. And remember, this isn't about having a bag and at people and being a keyboard warrior. If you want to behave like that, I'll be blocking you. All right, guys, look, thanks so much for watching. I hope we've learned a lot. I certainly have. There's going to be another build video coming up because we're going to do a body swap on this one again. I'm Mad Matt. Stay safe on the trails. Well, Jimmy Bar's not here though, is he?
Wait for it to turn up.
Sake, it's hard to work with.
No.
Okay.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who experiences that, Rod.
What?
Yeah. No, stop, Dad, stop, stop, stop.
I have a hammer.
Doesn't mean you have to use it.
I still have a hammer though.
That's great.
Right, take it off you.
Surely you've used it enough. Now I can't get my drink.
Yeah. Oh,
See?
perfect. This doesn't get all the credit.
It does.
The hammer was involved.
In making it work.
Preparing it. The hammer prepared it. You
It's
can't.
kind of like when you burn your toast and then you get a knife and you scrape off
Scrape all the
burnt
black
stuff.
off.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what you'll get defect for when the copper pulls you over.
That's all.
No blinker.
Alright. Alright, those two front doors work, Jess.
They do.
The rest of it's stuffed.
What are you doing?
I get the den out of this. There's no point really trying in that section. This one's also in a section that ain't gonna work.